The story of Hong Gildong is widely regarded as one of the most important pieces of literature in all of North and South Korea. It's definitely one of the oldest, being written in the late 16th or early 17th century. But it has been disputed that it might have been written in the late 19th century by Minsu Kang. Excuse me if I messed it up. His English translation is the one that I will be referencing today. Minsu Kang has argued that Hangildong was written, it was said that it was written during a time where Korea was going through communist changes, and that it was contributed to a radical thinker. But that in actuality it might be less communist in a message. Minsu King's translation comes from Pilsa 89. There are 34 variants of Hangildong, each one having a name like that. I'm not sure what it means, to be honest. But is the variant that he is translating is Pilsa 89, which is dated to be the oldest version and the longest version of Hangildong. Hangildong's impact in South Korean media is very apparent. There's been several video games named after it, several dramas in manga, and in South Korea. So here in America, if there's like a example check or an example credit card, the name might be John Doe. Well, instead of John Doe, it's Hong Gildong in South Korea. The story of Hong Gildong is compared to Robin Hood very often, but I honestly think that's very unjustified. There are lots of moments in the story where, well, the middle section of the story is about Hong Gildong organizing a group of bandits, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, but is in no way, I believe, the moral of this story and the message. It just happens to be part of the message. Hong Gildong is about breaking boundaries, becoming who you want to be, succeeding in life, and grabbing opportunities when they present you, living up to your potential. That's what I believe Hong Gildong is about. A quote referenced in the story several times is an old Chinese saying, is kings, lords, generals, and ministers are not made from a special blood. Saying that anybody, no matter your status in life, can achieve greatness. And I believe that's what the story is all about. So what is the story of Hong Gildong? Let's get right into that. Hong Gildong was born to a minister and a concubine. And back in those days, polygamy was not regarded as moral. So instead, men with high power would take one wife and several concubines. And if they were to have children with the concubines, their children could not inherit anything. They would be low-born. So Hong Gildong had a low-born status, and since he had that, he couldn't address his own father or his own brother as father and brother. He had to be looked down on, and he could not be seen as equals to them. Despite this, Hong Gildong was born with immense magical talent, able to conjure up spirits and heavenly soldiers to help him. Another concubine, the highest concubine, named Cho-rang, gets extremely jealous of Gildong's immense potential and the way the minister regards him. Even though he's still low-born, the minister still grants him favors. Cho-rang, the jealous concubine, hires a shaman and a physiognomist, which are low-born occupations, but basically the physiognomist reads people's facial features to discern their fortune, their future. So Cho-rang hires them to read the faces of everybody in the minister's house, and purposely tells the king that Gildong's face spells misfortune for the minister's occupation, and that Gildong will overthrow him. Interesting enough, this has very similar similar themes to the story of Zeus's origin in Greek mythology, where Zeus's father was so afraid of the his own children overthrowing him because of a prophecy that he ate his own children. It's very similar. So now that Gildong will be trapped in his room, or in the house forever, and the minister will never let him leave, because of his fear that he will overthrow him and cause cause chaos. Chorang sets up step 2 of her plan and hires an assassin to kill Gildong in his sleep. But Gildong is visited by a crow that chirps at him, and he reads it as that he's going to be in danger, so he sets up the trap. When the assassin enters the room, he falls for the trap, and Gildong kills the assassin. Then he uses his wind magic to bring the shaman and physiognomist into his room, and he kills them too. Mind you, Gildong is about 10 years old. After that, Gildong says goodbye to his minister father and his mother, who's a concubine, and leaves home to forge his own destiny. Thus ends part 1 of the story of. Part 2 of Hong Gildong begins with our hero journeying the wilds, trying to find his destiny, when he comes upon the Taesobek Mountains. In the mountains, there lives a group of bandits who are just banding around. And Gildong decides to approach them and ask them if he can be their leader. Instead of laughing in his face, the bandits take him seriously and say, in order to be our leader, you must take a test of strength and come up with a plan to raid this temple, because we haven't been able to figure out one. So the test of strength was for him to lift this humongous boulder, and Gildong not only lifts it, but just throws it. Immediately, the bandits decide that you don't need to make this crafty plan. You can be our leader right now. But Gildong is true to his word, and he still helps them raid the temple. His plan is that he would disguise himself as a royal official, or basically just be true to his birth and say that he is the son of a high minister. He travels dressed as a royal to the temple with a couple of the bandits also dressed as servants. And basically say that they're going to have a feast with all the monks. Every single one in the temple. Let's eat a bunch of rice. That's summing it up. When Gildong eats the rice, he sneaks some sand into his bowl, and when he eats it, there's a crunch, so all the monks can hear him, and they become what's the word I'm looking for here? Embarrassed that they made the rice poorly, but they didn't actually. It's just Gildong tricking them. So Gildong gets mad and orders for all the monks to be tied up, and for their wrongdoing. But while they're tied up, all the rest of the bandits from the mountains come and take all the treasures. There was a servant left in the temple that was one of the monks' servants, and he sees this happening, so he goes to tell the town next door, and the town sends soldiers. So Gildong dresses as a monk and goes to the soldiers and said, the bandits are going north, not south, but in actuality, the bandits are going south, and leads them away. This solidifies Gildong as the leader of the bandits, and he names their village Hoalbindang. That's the name of the town, and it's the name of the Legion of Bandits. It's a twofold name. Their new mission is to pillage ill-gotten land and give it back to the common people. This is where the Robin Hood theme comes in. There's 8 provinces. I'm assuming in Korea. They don't really specify, but I'm assuming in Korea there's 8 provinces. And so Gildong takes 8 bundles of straw and turns them into copies of himself. they are so realistic that not even the copies know that they're fake. They think that they're the real one individually. He sends all 8 different provinces with 500 men each to pillage ill-gotten land and give back to the common people. Ill-gotten land means like corrupt officials gaining land for their own benefit, not for the people's benefit, stuff like that. The king puts out a reward for Gildong's arrest. And Yi Hyup, the Supreme General of the Police Bureau, steps up and says that he will do it. While he's traveling to find Gildong, a youth in blue meets him and asks, "I'm looking for Gildong too. If you want to join me, I have to test your strength." So the Yi tests his strength by kicking the youth with all his might, but the youth barely budges, and he says, "Well, you have a lot of strength. Good job. No one's been able to move me ever." So the youth leads Yi into a forest and says, "Wait here while I storm the hideout of the bandits, and while Gildong is fleeing, you will get him." But it turns out after he leaves that a bunch of bandits are waiting in the trees and capture Yi. It turns out that the youth was actually Gildong in disguise, and he humiliates Yi and says, "No one can catch me because I'm just the greatest." So he releases Yi, and Yi decides, well, no one's ever going to believe that this happened, so I'm just going to pretend that I failed and never found him. So after that, Gildong keeps evading capture and actually starts straight up killing corrupt officials, which causes a problem. So the king finds out that Gildong is from the Hong family, and demands that they take care of their own problem. So Gildong's half-brother sends out a notice, says, "Hey, Gildong, to stop disrespecting our family and bringing shame to our name. Turn yourself in." And he does, so he brings Gildong to court, but it turns out there's 8 of them there, because all 8 of the strong Gildongs turn themselves in, or let themselves be captured. Everyone is confused. They're trying to check which one's the real one, because the real Gildong has a scar on his left leg. They're trying to check, but then all of them start talking at once and say that, don't arrest the real me, because I'm going to leave in 3 years anyways. And I didn't really do any real crimes, because I only pillaged land that was ill-gotten, and I gave it back to the common people. So I didn't really do anything wrong. And then all the 8 Gildongs collapse into straw. This king gets mad at that, of course. So Gildong puts out a notice and says that if the king grants him the title of Minister of War, that Gildong will turn himself in. So the king says, "I have a great plan. I'm going to accept this, but actually I'm going to wait in ambush with a bunch of men with muskets and shoot him when he comes to accept it." Well, Gildong gets there to accept the title, but says, "Thank you, king, for this great title. I don't deserve it, but thank you anyways. So I'm out of here." And then he flies up before any of the musketeers could shoot him. After that, the king just says, "Well, this guy is so great. He doesn't deserve death. He deserves to be honored, even though he is a criminal." And sings praises for him. And thus ends part 2. Part 3 begins with Gildong returning to his bandit home and telling his bandits that he will be leaving the journey. Just to go off on a journey. So he leaves and discovers the island of Yule and says to himself that he will conquer it one day because it's so rich in wealth, I guess. Then he discovers a mountain with a great place for a tombstone, which is kind of weird to think about, and decides that he will remember this place. Then he finds a small island by the name of Jae, Jae, and says this will be our new home, and returns back to the bandits. he tells his bandits to gather their families and meet him in Seogang. Then Gildong flies to. This wasn't made clear. Gildong can fly on clouds. Gildong flies to the king and asks him for 3,000 seoks of rice, which seok is a measurement in Korea. I don't know what it exactly translates to, but we'll just say 3,000 pounds of rice. And since the king loves him now, he agrees. They set sail for Jay inland and start their town. One day Gildong says that he needs some poison for an arrowhead, and he leaves for the Mangdang Mountains, which is in the country of Nakcheon. Now, in the country of Nakcheon, there is a rich family by the name of Baek, and Baek Yeong is the head of the family, and he has a really, really beautiful daughter. Says that this daughter of his makes the moon and the flowers hide because she's just so beautiful they can't stand to look at her. So they've had trouble finding a good husband for her. You can probably see where this is going. But suddenly one day she gets snatched up by some Uldongs, which are Korean demons, basically. Baek Young says that anyone who can save my daughter can marry her. Gildong just happens to be in the area looking for his poison, and discovers the Uldongs camped out. He hides in the shadows and shoots the Uldong leader with a poison arrow, and the Uldongs run away. The next day, Gildong reaches the Uldong hideout and says he's a traveling healer. The Uldong leader has fallen gravely ill due to a mysterious arrow, and they bring in Gildong to help revive him. Instead of doing that, Gildong just makes him die faster, which honestly seems really unnecessary, but whatever. And then he proceeds to kill the rest of the Uldongs. The translation directly quotes that he slaughters every single last one of them, which is pretty extreme. Then he finds that 3 girls were captured by the Uldongs and brings all 3 of them back to Nakcheon. He marries Lady Baek, which is the daughter, and he takes the 2 other girls, Jeong and Jo, as concubines. Then he brings all of his family-in-laws, including the Baek family, back to the islands of Jay, where they live. Fast forward 3 years, and Gildong is sad because he feels like he's disgraced his father and his family name with his past actions. So he decides to travel back to his birthplace to see them. But, little known to him, his father is on his deathbed, and his final thoughts were how much he mistreated Gildong and he wished he hadn't, and so on and so forth. So Gildong arrives, finds out his dad's dead, and starts to mourn with his brother and the other members of the minister's family. He brings his dead dad to the one tombstone place in the mountains that he found earlier and buries him there. That's really summing that up. There's like a long passage about how he's like pretending to be a monk, which I don't really understand, but anyways, then his family, mourns a little bit on J Island, and then they all leave and life returns normal. So Gildong decides to build up his military strength in this time after his father's death, and then he's like, oh yeah, the island of Yule, I remembered that I was going to conquer it. So he names Mu Tong a general in his army, which he's not very important, but he's one of the very few people that this story actually mentions by name, which is very interesting. So that's why I added him. Gildong's army washes over Yule, basically just conquering it really quickly, and demands that the king of Yule to surrender. But the king of Yule says, I'm not going to submit to these, this mob of bandits. So he takes out his army and meets Gildong in battle. The battle was pretty even until Mu Tong brings in the reinforcements, and Gildong begins to win. So the king tries to escape, but Gildong traps him like in this magic void where it's all black, and you just hear Gildong's voice yelling at him. The king is just so embarrassed that he lost that he just kills himself. And afterwards he gives the king of Yule a proper burial, which is, Gildong is a perfect guy, so that's what he does. Gildong takes control of Yule and renames his country Annam, and that includes the island of Jay. So now he has 2 islands, basically. He puts his friends and family in power, like Baekhyang and Mutong. He gives them high positions. And then one day Gildong decides he's going to repay the king for giving him the rice all those years ago. So he sends Jang Ho to complete this task. The king is given a bunch of silver, and he's like, Gildong's the best. So Jang Ho brings back Gildong's brother and his mom to visit, as well as Gildong's brother's real mom, which was Gildong's father's true wife, not one of his concubines. So Gildong's brother's real mother falls ill and dies, and is buried next to her husband, which is Gildong's father. So after grieving, Gildong's brother returns home. And sometime after that, Gildong's true mother, which was the concubine, dies, and is buried also next to Gildong's father. Some time passes, and Gildong has 3 sons, one for each of his women, basically. His son Sion is with his true wife, Lady Beck, and he's the crown prince. He has Chang with his concubine Jeong, and Hyong with his concubine Jo. Chang and Hyong are given, I think Chang is given Lord of Jay, the island, and Hyong is given Duke of the island. I believe it's in that order. So, and then many years pass, and now Gildong is 60 years old, and he decides that he wants to go out the way of the holy men. So one night he holds a giant party and makes Sion rise to be king of Annam, and then Gildong basically retires. Then he builds a small little hut out somewhere in Annam, but somewhere like secluded, and he lives in the small hut with Lady Beck for the rest of his days. That's the idea, anyways. That was the idea of the going out the way of the holy men. But one night there's a loud clap of thunder, and it shakes all of Annam. And it was near where the hut is. So King Sion searches for Gildong, for his parents, but finds that they have disappeared. And thus the story of Hong Gildong ends. Again, in my opinion, the story of Hong Gildong is not really comparable to Robin Hood. There are very similar elements, so I get the comparisons, but the overall theme is nowhere near the same message as Robin Hood and what Gildong should be remembered for. Gildong is more of a story of rising above status and class. Gildong was never allowed to be an official because of his low-born status, but he ends up ruling his own country. He treats his sons equally. His concubine sons, Chang and Hyong, are treated not as lowborns, but as equals to his son Sion, who is, the son to his true wife. So, not more of a story of Robin Hood, but more of a story of rising up, living up to your full potential. I also think that the story of Hong Gildong has very strong themes of family unity. Even though Gildong was mistreated, he always loved his father to the end, even at the beginning. He was very frustrated with society, but he never blamed his father or his brother for this. Even at the beginning, when the jealous concubine, he found out that it was a jealous concubine that was planning to kill him and hire the assassin and such. He thought about killing her, but he said, that she's basically part of my family. I'm not going to do Um, and even Gildong's father wishes he could treat Gildong right at the beginning, but he says, because Gildong has such great potential to be a great hero, but he couldn't because of society, and yeah, in his last moments, Gildong's father regretted the way he treated Gildong. And this plays back into the rising above status and class throughout the story. We see Gildong being recognized by higher-ups and officials as being a great person, and people who don't recognize Gildong for his greatness is because he's lowborn and end up dead, like the King of Yule, basically. And in the end, Gildong becomes close with his brother and his dad's true wife, which would be his, not his stepmom, but kind of stepmom. He becomes close with both of them, even though they were very distant with him in his childhood. He becomes close with them in the end, and has a very close family bond. So, these two themes should be remembered more. Hongedong should be remembered more for those two than any Robin Hood comparisons. So, at the end of the day, should you read the story of Hong Gildong? What it has going for it is that it's very short and a quick read. You won't be spending a lot of time reading this book. I was able to finish it in between schoolwork and my job, and just trying to balance the homework and actually going to class and then working. So I was able to squeeze it in and finished it in like 2 days. So, just to give you a comparison, I finished 2,666, the 900-page book. I finished it in a month, and I actually had a day or two to devote just to reading to it. So, Gildong is a very quick read. But what goes against it, that it reads like a translation, basically. If you read anything like the Odyssey or the Aeneid or Gilgamesh, they read like they've been translated. They're very stiff, not very flowery in their words, or it's just very stiff. Only read this if you're really into ancient literature like me. I'm really fascinated by this stuff. So hit the mic. I'm really fascinated by this stuff, and I love reading about it. So that's why I chose this to read. But if you're just in it, just a casual reader, I mean, it might be a good experience, but other than that, there's not much substance there. But I definitely think it has a good moral to the story, and is very cultural milestone for Korean literature. There's no denying that. But to read for entertainment purposes, you have a lot of better options. And that's it. That's the story of Hong Gildong. Thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe and stay tuned for my impending video on 2,666, which will be a monumental task to cover. Peace out.
I'm not so strong.